Hi everyone, and welcome to this critter tutorial bite for oxygen not included. As always, make sure to check out the critters tutorial bite if you haven't already for an overview of the critter and ranching mechanics. In this critter tutorial bite, we're going to be looking at pufts. These kind of cute critters are actually quite useful for making slime, bleachstone or oxylite, but are some of the hardest critters to ranch in the game. Around the map, the normal Puft morph can be found in marshy biomes, and Squeaky Pufts live in rust biomes. In total, there are 4 Puft morphs: the Puft, Squeaky Puft, Dense Puft and Puft Prince. All Puft morphs live for 75 cycles, and each has a slightly different livable temperature range, but they can all be ranched at safe tube temperatures. They also consume a specific gas from their atmosphere and excrete this as a similar solid. Pufts turn polluted oxygen into slime, Squeaky Puffs turn chlorine into bleachstone, and Dense Puffs turn oxygen into oxylite. The Puft Prince also makes these materials, but in much smaller amounts, and the main reason they exist is to impact the breeding chances of the other morphs, and this is why ranching particularly Squeaky and Dense Puffs is difficult. I'll explain how this works shortly, but first let's take a closer look at each morph. Starting with the Puft, this is the easiest to ranch and produces slime from polluted oxygen. Combined with a renewable source of polluted oxygen, usually from polluted water or morbs, renewable slime can be useful as either sage hatch food or dusk cap fertilizer. Puffs will breathe in their polluted oxygen, rise to the ceiling, and then excrete slime at 95% of the mass. That comes out to 47.5 kilograms per cycle per Puft, so a full ranch of 6 Puffs could sustain 71 dust caps or 2 sage hatches. Squeaky Puffs like slightly colder temperatures, similar to the rust biomes they are found in naturally. This green morph lives in chlorine and produces bleachstone in the same way as the Puft makes slime, and this is the only way to make bleachstone other than digging it up from around the map or mining it from space. Bleachstone has a couple of uses, particularly in fertilizing waterweed plants, and for geotuning all water and steam geysers, as well as being used in small amounts for hand sanitizers and hot tubs. A full Squeaky Puft ranch could supply a huge 340 waterweeds or 3.5 geotuners. The blue Dense Puft is as difficult to ranch as the Squeaky Puft and makes oxylite. Of course, the main use for oxylite is as a solid oxidizer for rockets, and it can also be used in spaced out DLC rockets to supply oxygen to crew modules. But Dense Pufts are very rarely ranched, because the alternative way to make oxylite, the oxylite refinery, is much simpler and easier to use and only requires oxygen and a little bit of gold. For numbers, you would need 7.5 Dense Puffs to match an oxylite refinery. And finally, the Puft Prince is different to the other 3 morphs. They consume all 3 of the gases that the other Puffs do, but they only excrete a small amount of it as solid. Their main purpose is in influencing egg chances, and let's look at that now. Puft egg chances are a little complicated, and depend on whether they are in the presence of a Puft Prince or not, including Puft Princes themselves, which will look for other Puft Princes. If any Puft morph is not stabled with a Puft Prince, then its egg chances to lay a Puft Prince egg will increase. But if they are stabled with a Puft Prince, then you can get the other 3 useful morphs. This odd behaviour is what makes ranching Squeaky and Dense Puffs difficult. In order to get more, you need to stable ideally 1 Puft Prince with 5 Squeaky or Dense Pufts, but when you do this, it becomes very difficult to automate with either critter sensors or drop-offs, as they cannot tell the difference between the morphs. Fortunately, ranching normal Puffs is easier, as you can simply have a ranch full of Puft Princes, and to supply the Puft Prince ranch, you can then have a ranch of Pufts, so they combine together nicely. To get the first Puft into the ranch, or to move them about without incubators, is a bit difficult as they cannot normally be wrangled. Instead, the Airborne critter bait is the intended way to attract them in. Bait this with slime for Pufts and Puft Princes, bleachstone for Squeaky Pufts and oxylite for Dense Pufts. I should also mention here another way to wrangle them, which can be considered an exploit. If you use a critter drop-off set to 0 critters and check Wrangle Excess, You can get dupes to wrangle critters that are not normally wrangleable. Then drop them off where required. So having understood how the egg chances work, let's start with the Puft ranch. As I said, a simple way to do this is to have one ranch of Pufts making Puft Prince eggs and one ranch of Puft Princes making Pufts. These are the ranches at the top, each with 6 Pufts, as that is the most you can fit in a 96 tile ranch. The ranches themselves are quite simple and only need a grooming station and critter drop-off. Similar to the hatch ranch, the Pufts can be trapped near the grooming station to speed up grooming and simplify the egg and slime collection. That's why there is the door and tile, with a little bit of water spilled on top to stop the Pufts moving through, but to keep the room as 96 tiles big. Note that you should not run a conveyor rail through this water tile, as off-gassing slime will delete it. I'm also using the incubators here, as shown in the critter tutorial bite, and these are used to refill the Puft and Puft Prince ranches when needed. There are 2 overflow rooms here, and the left one for Pufts makes more solid materials with the extra critters. All the extra eggs are left in this overflow room, and the lower priority drop-off here is submerged with small amounts of liquids to force the extra hatched Pufts away from the drop-off to stop it getting overcrowded. To set this up, bottle empty a few kilograms of the 3 liquids in order. For example here, oil, petroleum and water, and make sure not to use too much liquid or it will flood the drop-off. The extra Puft Princes aren't really useful, so I'm using the partially submerged drowning chamber for this overflow. I explained this and the airlock design in the hatches tutorial bite, so give that a watch for a full explanation. Now, feeding the Pufts in both the main ranch and overflow room can be done in a couple of ways. A very simple one is to use polluted water at the bottom, which will off-gas into polluted oxygen. Here I've simply used a hydro sensor to control a liquid vent that adds some more polluted water as it slowly runs out. The room is best set up with a liquid lock and atmo suits to keep the atmosphere as only polluted oxygen, and this is a good idea for all Puft ranches. Another way to provide polluted oxygen, in theory, is by spawning morbs and collecting these near the Pufts. I will cover morbs in more detail in their own critter tutorial bite, but even with 20 morbs here, you can see they are struggling to keep up with the Pufts, so this is probably not advisable. In the Spaced Out DLC, sublimation stations are a more reliable way to make polluted oxygen though. The more challenging bit, however, is supplying the polluted dirt on a large scale. The only viable way to do this sustainably is with arbor trees and ethanol production, which I will cover in more detail in the arbor tree plant tutorial bite. To supply one Puft ranch would need about 2 1/4 ethanol distillers, which itself would need 4 domestic arbor trees or about 16 wild ones. Either way, the slime produced is collected with an auto sweeper and conveyor loader to be used where needed, and also to take any critter eggs out of the room. Do be aware that slime, as well as bleach stone and oxylite, will off-gas on conveyor rails, so you may want to keep the rails behind tiles to stop this. In this example, the ranch output goes into the overflow areas. The rest of the rails are for collecting eggshell and meat from the overflow areas and the incubators. But that's all there is for a Puft and Puft Prince ranch, so overall not too difficult. Squeaky and Dense Pufts though are challenging. As I explained earlier, to make more dense and squeaky Pufts, they must be stabled with a Puft Prince. That means a breeder ranch for these variants needs 1 Puft Prince and 4 or 5 dense or squeaky Pufts. But neither critter drop-offs nor critter sensors can count different morphs, so automating this is tricky. I've done quite a bit of testing and research, but I think I have created a working automated design. One good thing is that dense and squeaky Pufts can use the same design, so we can focus on one. Then the only difference is the gas supply, which is through a high pressure gas vent. Oxygen for dense Pufts is easily made from electrolyzers and SPOMs, as I covered in the oxygen tutorial bite, and chlorine is most easily obtained from chlorine gas vents, which I covered in the geyser tutorial bite. Both of these ranches also need a regular supply of Puft Princes, which will be taken out as eggs from the Puft ranch on a conveyor rail. We'll pass these over to the Squeaky or Dense Puft ranch first, and if they aren't needed, then they go into the evolution chamber as before. And that's right, we need both a Puft and Puft Prince ranch to supply the Puft Princes for this, as well as 3 sets of incubators. If you aren't interested in the slime, then for this design you can also use the evolution chamber for the extra Pufts too. Also, to get a Squeaky or Dense Puft, you may need to breed one first. This is done by putting 5 Pufts and 1 Puft Prince in a stable together, which will increase the egg chances for the Pufts to lay either Squeaky or Dense Puft eggs. I would recommend just doing this manually in a temporary setup like this first to make the new eggs. Use the critter drop-off set to 1 Puft Prince, or use storage bins with eggs. Then once this is in, set it to 6 Pufts to fill up the room. Then once you have some Squeaky or Dense Puft eggs, you can start ranching them specifically. So onto that ranch design, I'm going to use Squeaky Pufts in the example. This design is very similar to the Puft ranch, with the incubators and overflow area. The main difference is the ranch area, so let's take a closer look at that. The key difference here is the small Puft Prince area. To get more Squeaky or Dense Pufts, we want to keep 1 Puft Prince in the ranch, and this area needs to be connected with the rest of the stable. Again, to stop the morphs mixing, I've used a 1 tile gap with a little bit of water to stop the Puft Prince moving through. Importantly, I've also locked this door as the egg control is done with automation, so we need to stop dupes getting in. The critter drop-off is set to 5 Squeaky or Dense Pufts and will be refilled from the incubators as normal. To make sure we have 1 Puft Prince here, the Puft ranch output, making Puft Prince eggs and slime, comes in from above. I've used a solid filter to send only the Puft Prince eggs to the right, where they pass a conveyor meter. If they aren't needed, then they loop back up and head into the evolution chamber, but the conveyor meter will let through 1 egg every 74 cycles. This is the automation, and unfortunately counting to 74 is a bit tricky. Basically, we have to count to 70 first with 2 signal counters, then start counting to 5 with another signal counter using an AND gate. Note that the left signal counter is upside down, and these 2 counters are joined with horizontal wires at the top, but not at the bottom. The signal counter settings are 7, 10 and 5. We have to count to 5 on this last one, because this last signal counter will start counting at 1 when the main counter hits 70. So this reaches 5 when the main counter is 74. Then the green signal goes to the conveyor meter to allow 1 egg through when 1 passes on the rail from the Puft ranch, making Puft Prince eggs. It also resets all the counters. To drive this, a cycle sensor is used, and you can use almost any setting for this as long as it has green and red. Finally, there is also a manual reset switch that only needs to be used once to reset the counters when the first Puft Prince egg goes into the ranch. As a final note, beware the conveyor loader settings in each place. The main ranches can be set to accept all materials. The incubator loaders are for eggshell. The overflow area loaders can accept everything except the critter eggs. And specially for the Dense or Squeaky Puft ranch, the conveyor loader needs to accept everything except Puft Prince eggs. With that covered, this is my full design of a Squeaky or Dense Puft ranch, and here is the one-take reference for this design. And that's it for this guide to Pufts, in oxygen not included. I hope this helps you ranch these useful but challenging critters, and thanks for watching.